Ready for the interview, in a few, get a cue. Live on the laptop, watch what I'm gonna do. Welcome to the show, let them know we got a point of view. Hey, yo, let's have a combo. Say what you feel, be real, that's the motto. Real talk pronto, Dr. D, PhD, hit an intro. Hold up, wait, gotta be social. Network global, a home for the local. Gotta be social, network global, a home for the local.
This is going to be an interesting episode. I really feel it. This is different. It's going to be really different. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. It's crazy. I'm always just meeting people doing these podcasts. There's something amazing about just meeting people all the time, like regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think we should all do a little bit more, just get out there and meet other people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do the same thing. I just like to chat with people and learn about them and see what makes them tick.
That's right. I guess there's a lot to learn with you because I think the topic we're going to discuss today, and as it'll branch out, is something I think a lot of people, including myself, had really only heard of maybe like in a movie or something or some other. We really don't know. I don't know anybody that has. It's synesthesia. Is that what it is?
That's right. Yeah.
I got it right. Let's talk a little bit about, before we dive into your life with this, like what it is, so we have an operational definition of it.
Sure. Yeah. The simplest way to describe it is that your senses get crossed in your brain. So when you hear something or smell something, your brain will process it as either a texture or a sound or a color. So for me, it happens with pretty much everything that I experience, including people and places, that if I take in a scent or take in music, I'm seeing in my mind's eye the color that it is, the shape that it is, and sometimes like a choreography of what it looks like in action.
How was this as a child? What did you think of this, like when it was happening to you?
I just thought it happened to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think that it was different. And honestly, the biggest memory that comes back is being in the car and hearing music and watching the choreography happen in my brain, or laying on the floor and listening to music and just drawing what I saw the music moving as.
Yeah.
And I just thought, because I loved art, that was just something that happened to people on a regular.
That's interesting. No one else had told you that they felt this way as well when you were growing up?
No, and I didn't really ask. I think I just assumed that it was something that people were seeing. But I recently asked my dad about it, and I think he has a form of it too, because we were tasting something, and I said, "Dad, for me, this flavor goes like this. It goes on an angle and up." And he goes, "Oh, for me, it goes down." So it was an interesting way to assess, did he have it too? And maybe we both did, and we just didn't know what it was.
What is it like, up, like the direction up, or?
I'll see it go in my mind. If I have a glass of wine or taste something, I'm like, oh, the flavor goes up, or it'll show me like if I'm listening to music, it'll make different motions or movements, and I'll watch it go up in my brain.
Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. When did this start to be defined that this is what it was in your life?
I actually just learned what it was called about a year or so ago. I didn't even know what it was. I had seen another artist who has synesthesia paint to the music that she was listening to, and she said she had sound to color synesthesia. And I went, oh, that's interesting. I think I have that too. And then the more I researched about it, the more I figured out this is what I have. And it turns out that seeing aura around people too is a form of synesthesia. So this had always been happening, and I was playing with it, but I didn't really know the vocabulary for it. And then once I started to understand what it was, then I could say, oh, this is what I'm experiencing, and start to put some language to it and explain it.
Do you maybe the prevalence of this in the population at all? Like how often?
Yeah, it's about 4% of people have something like this.
Actually seems high to me.
Yeah, a lot of artists and musicians have it. There's Pharrell has a movie coming out where he's created himself as a Lego, and he described listening to music and seeing shape and color come out. And I went, oh my gosh, I think Pharrell has synesthesia. Fascinating.
Interesting. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly this plays a big part in your art. For that, how does that artistic expression come out normally? Is it different all the time, or how does it move for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. If I'm painting something in the studio just by myself, I'll paint the energy of a feeling or the energy of something that's happening. If I'm painting for someone specifically, then I am actually looking at them and assessing their energy and then painting a portrait of what I see for them and the color that I see for them through their aura and through their chakras too. So I call that a spirit portrait for somebody.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to this assessing your energy. Take me through that. You're looking at someone. What does that mean?
Yeah. So when I meet somebody or interact with somebody, I can see what color energy they have. And if I'm chatting with somebody, I can get a feel for where are they in their body or where do they dwell, what chakra center. And that sort of tells me maybe where there may have been some pain or stuck emotion or trauma or something. And then I actually will translate that into a portrait for somebody if I'm doing a portrait for them. But I'll read somebody's energy and experience them. If there's somebody who's a little off-putting, I might experience them as prickly or spiky. Or if I'm meeting somebody who's just a really gentle spirit, I'll experience them as soft, or their color might be like a gentle blue or green. So that's how I take somebody in, if you will.
What are people's response to the energy that they see that you paint about them?
It is, I think, the biggest response that I get. So I'll meet with somebody over Zoom and I'll say, okay, here's what I was hearing or receiving when I was doing your portrait. And then I'll spin their painting around. And the first response is, oh my gosh, that is beautiful. And I think it's because they're able to see themselves in a different way and they're seeing themselves portrayed as color. And I think it reminds them that they're beautiful without any sort of conditions around it. So it's usually a very open-hearted, loving response from someone.
And have you ever painted someone and it felt really particularly, this is not great, right?
Yeah, I think nobody ever has like a dark energy, but I can definitely experience when somebody has been through something that has caused them pain or that they're still sitting in pain or they're sitting in grief. And there have been times where, I try not to get in the way of whatever it is that wants to come through. So I allow myself to be a channel for the message or the color or the shape that comes through for somebody. And sometimes two paintings will come through. One will come through really distorted and cloudy or darker colors. And then usually the second painting will come through and be a little bit lighter and filled with some more positive, I think, not energies, but like positive messages, I think, for them. So when that happens, I'll share that and say, there were two paintings for you. This is the first one. Here's what I heard. Here's the second one. Does this one make sense or resonate with you? And I share both of them because they're part of our experience. And I never want to censor that from them. So I share whatever comes through, if I can, with a loving message.
Do you think there's like a consistent energy that someone has that you see and then that kind of vacillates based off of what's going on in their life? Or how do you see that?
Yeah. What I see is like a snapshot in time. And so it'll show me where they're dwelling in their body in the moment. And then if I do a portrait or a follow-up sort of color reading for someone a couple months later, it's possible that it's changed. Because if I see somebody who's in grief and their color is like a blue gray kind of, it's lacking some brightness or vibrancy, and we work on shifting their color energy to be more positive by adding brighter colors or oranges or things that are going to be uplifting, then the next time we meet, they might have moved into a different shade of blue. They might have elevated to a different color than they were before.
Maybe this is weird, but do you know what your own energy is by having this?
You're the second person to ask me that. I haven't done my own. I started to do my own spirit portrait, and then it was just like a deep violet purple, which is about the crown. That's about connecting to a higher power or being connected to a universal energy. And it made sense that I was stuck there because I'm constantly churning ideas. And I'm constantly looking for ways to commune with God, connect with God, and wanting that to come through as clean and clear as possible. So I'll have to do another one for myself and see what.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought about this. Do you see yourself in this whole thing? And like when you meet someone, just generally out in public, whatever is, maybe this is weird. Do you just see a bunch of colors with people and stuff? You're seeing them. Is it very obvious to you?
No, sometimes no. I will say I really have to sit with somebody and kind of meditate on their energy or spend some time in quiet to allow whatever is coming through to come through. And I also just don't want to walk around and just be pinging off of people's energy all the time. But I have noticed that, especially as I've gotten older, I'm more sensitive to energy and don't really like to be in large groups anymore because I feel like I'm taking in so much of what people are feeling and can tune into the overall collective energy of a space and tell whether or not it's going to be good or not so good for me that day.
I would think that'd be a pretty handy thing to be connected to. And
Yeah,
I
for
think we all feel this kind of, we have feelings about different energy and intuition and all these different things. But we often don't trust these things.
yeah.
What do you think that is?
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just thinking you probably experience that too. When you're chatting with people, you probably get an instant read with someone of who they are, how they're going to behave, and you probably intuitively already know before you even move forward in conversation with them. I don't think we're really taught how to tune in to our intuition. I think we're taught how to learn and remember and to memorize, but we're not always taught to be still and trust and go within. And so a lot of I think that's one of the things that have helped me throughout the last couple of years is to be able to return to that place of stillness and trust that whatever I'm receiving, that first impression or that initial color that I see is the right one and that it's telling me something from the get-go. But that is a daily, I would say, moment to moment practice. It's a practice for sure.
Yeah, I think so. In my personal training business, my full-time thing, I'm always seeing people and everyone comes to their session with a certain energy. And I feel it immediately
Mhm.
and it guides where I go with them. But some of it is I want them to know sometimes if we show up this way, it's like, are you showing them in a way that, are you realizing how you're showing up?
Yeah.
And that energy, I think what we don't do is we don't think about our own energy. That is a projection, this wavelength that's coming, like shooting out to other people. And we've made this the land of woo-woo to people. We've stigmatized it.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that
Oh,
from
yeah.
other people?
100%. I think it's something that we all intuitively tap into. And I think if we were more open to it, we would move through life with so much more ease than we do. Because I think we all have a little bit of that woo in us.
Yeah, of course.
We all do, right? We're spirits. I think we're all spirits here having
Most
a human
definitely.
experience. Yeah, so you get that too. It's the energy that you bring to someone that also you pick up on and you carry with you. And so I always try to bring as much positive energy as I can to somebody or each encounter that I have because you never know what someone's going through and you never know how much that interaction could uplift someone if they needed to help elevate
Yeah.
that energy too.
Feel like there's always this fight between things that we don't understand very well, and we want to put it in a box. And we want to have this very specific thing. This occurs in this part of the brain and this happens. And we get frustrated sometimes with people when it's unexplainable. Not everything is like cut and dry.
Yeah.
And I think this type of thing is something that frustrates people sometimes because it feels like it in this realm of not just spirituality, but it feels almost bigger in a sense of, oh, what is this almost supernatural thing? And a lot of people, some people, they're scared of that. They're scared of it. You know?
Yeah, that's so true. I love that space of the unknown.
Me
I
too.
love that space of not being able to prove something, but just to have faith in it. I think that's a big leap for somebody to take, but I live in that. I love that so much. It's like this, you have to believe it in order to see it. And if you're not
Right.
willing to just believe, then it's not there. It's not there for you. But I think that's so powerful to have faith in something that you can't see or that you
Yeah.
can't explain with facts or science.
Yeah. I think there's somewhat of a butting of heads, some like to explain things. Like when I think about all this, I tend to do this maybe like I think about myself and then I think about the gigantic universe that's out there and there are red dwarfs and supernovas and 13 billion years ago, lights coming towards us that is so old, like you're never going to know everything about that. I don't even know 1% of it.
All
It's
right.
like, You got to get comfortable with the fact that there's just a lot of mystery
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah. And I think that not knowing is powerful because some things aren't meant to be understood, but just to be admired or just to be observed and taken in. And I think that's what art is, right? We are not supposed to understand art fully, but it moves us some way. Move. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you go to art galleries? That must be a wild experience. I mean,
I love going to art galleries. My favorite thing is seeing the brush strokes that an artist left behind. To me, it's just so beautiful to think about the fact that those bristles touched the paint and left that mark. And I'm just so inspired by that, fascinated by that too.
it was interesting. I feel like I'm very big into gardening, big because I feel like gardening is artistic and it's
Mm,
ecological. It has a lot of. It's not a controversial thing. I think anybody is, even if you don't like gardening, you think, oh yeah, that's cool. You don't want to do it. I feel like art's very similar. You may not have a huge artistic thing, but you appreciate the beauty
hmm
of it. That's why it actually baffles me that it's not a bigger part of our society and education.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the things that we push away too soon from people because we're all
And
born creative and we love to express ourselves. And gardening, your hands are working in the soil and you're cultivating, you're planting and you're harvesting. And just the fact of using your hands for 15, 20 minutes lowers your cortisol levels. It makes you feel more relaxed. There's something really healing in that. And there's that creativity in there. It's really beautiful. And I think we take that away from people too soon and we make them move into something more rigid. I wish that there was more openness to art and music and culture and all the things there.
why do you think this is taken away too soon?
Oh, I know for me, it felt like I had this little bubble of creativity and I wanted to explore art and I wanted to explore music. And it was, you should move into a role that will make you money and get you the 401k and do the things that are acceptable in terms of the traditional
Yeah.
understanding of money making and living a life. And I think there's so much more to our existence than that. And I think trying to find a way to allow yourself to express creatively or to bring something new into the world and making money should be more, it should come together in a better way.
And it also, in a weird way of saying is we've painted artists as struggling, starving artists. We've provided this narrative that if you do this, you will not have a very well-developed financial life, or you'll just be struggling all the
hmm
time. That's
Yeah.
the narrative that I grew up with, but
Same.
then I think a lot of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. And it's hard. That's a core belief that you really have to work to get out of. And I'm sure you encounter that with your clients all the time too, this like belief about something that you have to overcome in order to move out of a place where you feel stuck or where you feel like you just can't move out of.
Oh, most definitely. And this art thing, I think one of the reasons too, I think was interesting is my daughter's 12, going to be 13 coming up, and she's like a super art person from day one. Art. I don't think she cares about anything else except for art. She makes her own bags and purses. She's an incredible a painter, drawer, and I see this in her, and I realize that it's my job to keep her moving towards this.
Yeah.
And she's not a math person. She's like the least math. It's like math is way down. Like she doesn't get it. It doesn't make sense to her.
Yep.
But I feel like we've made like the person who's great at math, and then we think this is valuable. And then the person who's in the art, we go, this is just a side thing.
Yeah.
That's frustrating as a parent to see in school systems that this gets rewarded for doing, and this is just what's an elective, maybe whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I applaud you for seeing that in her and then encouraging her to keep moving down that path because I think it's very simple to just say what you said. You should really be learning math. I was the same way. I could not figure out math. I think I didn't score above a C in math until college in that very first freshman math class that you had to take. And I was like, this is my last math class ever.
I was the same way, by the way. I like just didn't make sense to me. Actually, the only math that makes sense to my daughter is math with shapes or like
Oh,
geometry. Like she goes, the shapes make sense to me
yeah.
and stuff, but everything else just no. But painting, anything with painting or clay, that tactile sense,
Yeah.
just made me think like there's so many humans who have this incredible gift that we have tried to push down
Yeah.
because of what a societal construct of that STEM is so much more important than this. It's crazy,
Yeah.
you know?
It is crazy. It is crazy. Oh, I hope that she continues with it, and I hope that she sees I was just about to say success, and I didn't wanna say, like, she has to achieve a certain level
Yeah,
of because how do you define that? But I hope that she loves it and follows that
yeah.
curiosity of hers.
How did your parents see your artistic ability and synesthesia? What was their response to it?
I think that they saw it and they, I think, wanted to cultivate it, but definitely had the response of, "You should really think about doing something totally different." And my dad, we talked about this, my dad was in the Army, and he had done recruiting for a little while, and so he said to me, I think I was maybe 16 or 17, "I think you'd be really good at human resources, you should look into that." And didn't I just go? I feel like if you wind me up and point me in a direction, I will go as far as I can. So I went into human resources for close to 20 years and then found myself turning 40 and going, "Oh my gosh, I hate this. I'm good at it. I can do it." Was fine, but I had that kind of soul tired that no amount of vacation was going to fix. And I feel like I just didn't have that creative outlet, or I just didn't have that thing that made me feel it didn't fill my cup. And I needed to
Mm.
find art again to fill my cup.
How did you start to find art again?
Little by little, I was working with a spiritual teacher, and she and I talked about what were you like as a kid? Because, like your daughter, your gifts show up when you're a kid. If you look back at your childhood, you probably started to exhibit signs of what you're doing now that were so innate in you. And mine was art. And so when we talked about that, it was like this light bulb went off, and I went, oh my gosh, that explains so much. All these little side businesses I tried to start that were related something creative. And I just started to paint, and it was like letting steam out a little bit at a time. And I'm still doing that, I think, to this day, just painting and seeing how I feel, painting and moving through an emotion or trying to release feelings or things that are in there that you're trying to get out. And then I decided I want to do this full time. And the day that I got my very first art show was the day that I got promoted at work. And it was like, the universe handing me a menu saying, "Which one? Do you want it? Which one?"
Yeah.
And I had to pick.
Wow. You're so right about you see this in kids very early. Like for me, I was always like into athletics and exercise. It was like from the jump. And my parents always encouraged that. Always. And my brother, who was an artist, a musician, super early, was acting in plays and all that stuff. And my parents encouraged it. And we're both doing the things that we started early doing it. And that's why it pains me so much when I see somebody working in a job and I see this incredible talent they have and this passion, and someone told them this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
You'll never make it like this. There's a lot of doctors and lawyers out there who should not be doing those jobs right
100%.
now.
I just got chills. You're right. I think there's a book, I think it's called The Second Mountain or something, and it talks about how you climb this first mountain in your life and you're doing the things that you think you should be doing. And then all of a sudden you look down and you're like, "Oh, I didn't want to climb this mountain. I want to climb the next one." And then you have to pivot like me. You pivot and go, "Okay, I don't want to spend the next 40 years doing what I think everybody thinks I should be doing. I want to do what lights me up." And then you start to climb that next mountain.
Yeah. Has there been any resistance to your discussions about synesthesia and like, cause it's a different topic. Does anybody go, oh, I'm not sure about that. Is that a thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think especially because it connects to spirituality for me too. I think there's that, we'll say the woo factor, that some people aren't comfortable with. And so I find myself in this place of wanting to just openly fly my woo flag for
Oh,
all
yeah.
I'm feeling a little bit, what will people think? And it's definitely been a little bit hard to let myself be as open as I want to be for what I see or feel or experience. But also, I've learned that what I do and what I'm sure you do can't just be condensed down into a business card that you hand out. It's so much bigger than that. There's so much more to who we are as people. You can't really just chunk it into a box and be like, this is who I. It evolves.
Yeah. And I think one good thing is that I have noticed through all of my discussions of podcasts and just living life and living in this age, just era, that there seems to be a growing acceptance of energy and this feeling that there are things bigger than us and that people feel things differently. And I think this is such a positive thing that I don't want to overlook as well, is that there is more acceptance, I think, on some level. Have you seen this yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel like people are more open to learning about things, or they're more open to saying, I don't quite get it, but I'm curious about it and I'm okay to hear about it or learn more about it. I think there's less skepticism now when you talk about things like energy, because you can show somebody, well, you feel that, or when you walk into a room, if there's been an argument in it, you can feel that. You intuitively know that, or helping somebody connect more to their intuition so they can experience it too. And then they start to go, oh, wow, I didn't realize the universe has been communicating with me this whole time. That's fascinating.
What do you attribute maybe the bigger acceptance during this time for this?
I wonder if it's related to what we've all gone through in the last 4 years at the beginning of COVID and when we were all inside. And I think that big pause on our lives gave people a lot of time to really look within and determine or question how they were living, what their beliefs were, whether or not they wanted to continue down certain paths or relationships or jobs or whatever it was. And I think that made people go, there's got to be more to life than just this, because we were all just stuck inside trying to figure out how to live in this new world. And I think that for a lot of us that changed, and I think for a lot of us it didn't, but I think you had to decide which path you were going to go down after that, and continue to now too.
Yeah. I think I forgot who said this, but this is throughout the ages, is that in every crisis that occurs in humanity, there is something that happened within the crisis that becomes the streak of change.
Mm,
That is not just the negative part, but there's something, and there's little small things that happen that start building something, blossom something else,
yeah.
like gardening aspect into it.
Yeah.
And whatever it is. And I feel like you hit it nail on the head as well. But also, I think as humans, we haven't actually spent a lot of time in this last 100 years thinking about our place in the universe and this existentialism. We spend a lot of time building things, being busy, distracting ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think people and in the rise of mental health, more acceptance there, we're heading in a very interesting direction that I've been telling people. I feel like this techno-spirituality that we're heading into.
Yeah.
Technology is ever present. It will not fall off a cliff unless with just catastrophe. But there's a larger increase in spirituality in all branches of that.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like in many ways we're becoming techno-spiritualists. These things are rising together.
Oh,
We're,
that's so interesting.
we're wondering our place in the cosmos with technology at
Yeah.
the same time.
Oh, I didn't think about that way, but that makes total sense to me, especially because of the ways we were able to connect with each other during the pandemic and everything too. It changed how we communicated with each other. It changed
Yeah.
how we work. It changed boundaries for your work day. It changed so much that I think was positive, as well as the
Yeah.
hard stuff too. But there was a lot of positive that came out of that too.
I think so. And I think the fact that it's more of a globalized existence for a lot of humanity, most humans did not know each other in other parts of the world. It was a
Mhm.
very isolated existence from the South Americas to North America, Europe. They're very siloed. Now everybody sees what other people are doing
Mhm.
and they go, oh, wow, other people feel this way about art, the way I feel.
Yeah.
and other people feel energy and all this. Maybe this is acceptable. I think this is to me another Renaissance period that we're in. It's just
Yeah.
it's a technical Renaissance, a tech spiritual Renaissance. I feel.
I love that. That's a great description of it. I think you're right because we're definitely changing the way things are happening, or we're trying to, and coming up with new ways of doing things that maybe wouldn't have even been open to conversation in the past, but now people are actually considering.
Right. And think about, what are your thoughts about AI creating art? Right now, robots creating art. How does that fit into an artistic perspective?
It's such a tricky thing, right? I've seen a bunch of artists move off of Instagram recently because there's something with Meta that said they would be allowing images shared to be used for AI, and a lot of artists that I followed said they didn't want any of that, and so they were moving their art off that platform. I think it's hard, right? We all create from, I was talking to somebody else about this too. We each have our own unique marks, the marks that we make, like the paintbrush strokes on in the museum. Nobody can replicate that with the hand. With the hand, you create that. But with AI, you wouldn't get that same sort of response. You wouldn't get that same sort of, I think, emotional reaction through something that was created that way versus sitting with someone like me who intuitively paints, where you get that spirit creating. You're almost communing with the divine when you're creating, that you don't get from a computer that's creating, that isn't connected to a spirit or an emotion or the kinds of responses that we as humans have. So I think it's hard. I think in some ways AI is super duper helpful. I love to use Chat GPT for certain things. I'm
Me
like, help
too.
me come up with an idea for this. It's the wheels turning. For art, I think that's really hard to replicate because you literally are taking the spirit out of the inspiration.
It would be interesting. I think this is well beyond you and I's time, but for future humans, someone would come to us and maybe say, I am an artist. I'm creating a robot. And this is my stroke signature.
Yeah.
And what if that in the far future, that robot creates something like the Sistine Chapel and it tells you, I made this. I felt this or something
Yeah.
like, where this is the techno spirituality. I feel like we're crossing into this pantheon that we have
Yeah.
no idea where we're going to, because humans anthropomorphize everything.
Yeah.
Our dogs are like people to us.
Uh-huh.
Our car can be anthropomorphized to a person. They call it a name. They give it these. We're going to do that with AI too, I believe, in the future. What does that mean artistically for us?
Oh my gosh. That's a really great question. It makes me think of like futuristic movies and how you
Yeah.
have that the voice in the background that says good morning to you, and I'm going to make your favorite smoothie today, and what do you want to wear today? It's trippy when you think about it that way, how that
Yeah.
lives could be so different in
It could be
positive,
very,
not maybe too.
yeah, because I think I asked you this, what does the term artist mean to you?
I feel like anybody who creates anything, right? I think of God as the ultimate artist, the creator
Right.
of all things. What makes a seed something that can grow in the ground and bloom into a tomato? That's pretty incredible. That's art within itself. That's something
Yeah.
that feeds people and can be replanted to make more of something. Like that's a beautiful thing. So I feel like an artist is somebody who sits with inspiration or sits with a communion with a higher power and co-create something beautiful and just enjoys the act of making it, whether it's seen or shown or sold or shared, just the act of making that is artistic.
The act of making. That's the best answer I've heard about that. The act of making. You ever seen, I had a neighbor in Washington State when I used to live there who was an older gentleman, and he would make benches, big woodworking guy. And I always think people who make things out of wood, mind blowing.
Hmm.
No directions. They just know how to make stuff. I don't have none of that. I really wish I did, because I think it would be very handy and useful, actually. But if you ask them, how do you make that? How do you know how to make that bench or this thing? I just know. That is deeply inside of you, that artist is there
Yeah.
deeply in you.
Yeah. There was a video, it was like a funny video, a meme or something, and it was a beaver that had been rescued, and the beaver lived inside with this family, and it would just start dragging things from around the house to build a dam. There's no water, there's no running water in the house or anything there, but it intuitively knew to start finding things to bring over and build a dam. And it's fascinating to think about like how innately that beaver felt that when it didn't grow up with other beaver. It didn't grow up around, it didn't see it happening. It just knew to do it. Like
Yeah.
we know what we're here to do.
Yeah.
If we,
And that's what makes it frustrating when somebody destroys that in another person, just
yeah,
because it doesn't fit the societal construct of that you have to make a lot of money and you have to, this is the way to have wealth. And this is the thing, I have a very different take on it. Obviously, I've had a good career. I can take care of myself. My family's great. But it's interesting. I think we're so wealth oriented that if someone is not striving to do that, it's like they're looked as a failure. But not everybody wants that.
right.
That's like such an anti-attitude. Oh, you don't want to, like this happens to me all the time. People will contact me on LinkedIn. Do you want to make seven figures and stuff? I'm like, I guess if it'd be nice if it was organically happening through my business and all, but this seems like a scam to me. So like,
Yeah.
maybe I don't want the responsibility of having to do that to get to that point. Maybe I
Mhm.
just good where I'm at. And
Yeah.
this good where I'm at seems to be like, it's like the anti-hustle culture for people.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally
People push against that. They're like, why don't you want to be well? Well, it's not. That's just, I don't want to do it the way you're telling me to. Good
Yeah,
point.
I want to exactly. And I think it's so interesting to look at what the root, not the root cause, but what's the root motivation behind that?
Right.
If you keep asking, but why? But why? What is your intrinsic motivation that
Yeah.
makes you want that? It probably all goes back to some sort of wound or place of hurt where you go, because I want to be accepted, or
Yeah.
because I don't want to be abandoned, or because I don't want whatever it is. I think it all ties to that. And you can understand yourself more when you can look at that wound and go, okay, I'm operating out of this wound instead of I'm operating out of a place of peace. Because we trade a lot. We trade our peace a lot for the things that we think other people want us to have.
Most definitely. I would like to jump into, because I think one is be great for my daughter, but also for other people who are going to listen and watch this, who are definitely artists and they're like, they want to be you. They want to move from whatever they were doing into art. What are some practical steps they can do to start making art a bigger part of their life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing is to make time to make art. And the act of making is healing in and of itself. And I think it shows you a lot about who you are and what motivates you, what you're inspired by, or finding, I don't want to say finding your niche because that sounds a little bit like marketing, but figuring out what your unique style is, right? What kind of art do you like to make? And then I credit my friend Emily for saying this to me: when you feel uninspired by something, instead of trying to make art with a capital A, which is the art that you think should be shown or shared or sold, right? Make art with a lowercase a and allow yourself to just play in the dirt a little bit and figure out what feels good to you that day. And that might surprise you. And then I think it's really about trying to share your work. I think one of the reasons artists don't share their work a lot is because it's so deeply personal for some of us. And there's a fear of rejection or a fear of somebody not liking what you make. And I think you have to very quickly move past the desire to be accepted by everybody and instead move to a place where you're making the work that speaks about your spirit the most, that you're putting authentic work out into the world.
That's beautiful. I think that judgment part is hard. It's because when you create something that's deeply innate in you and beautiful to you, and you don't know if other people feel the same way you feel about your work.
Yeah.
I always give a lot of credit to musicians and stuff. I mean, you're doing something that nobody really sees behind the scenes. You make it and you put it out there, and you're just going to get judged
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Negative and positive. It's coming. It's nothing all positive.
Yeah, that's so true. I love to see too the process for how musicians write music. There's a
Same.
show that I listen to. I forget what it's called, but it basically has the artist sit down and say, here's how we wrote this song and each little part and each little element. And I think sometimes you know, it's interesting to watch the process behind something because there's so much that goes into that painting that you see or that song that you hear that was part of that artist's creative experience that informs so much of the outcome that we miss out on. And I think that's where the good stuff is. That's where the really juicy, like inspiring stories are. That's powerful there.
I was a big fan of, I can't remember when it was, but I used to watch Behind the Music all the time.
Yeah.
And VH1 or something maybe was on there. And I was obsessed with that show because I just liked how people made music. Like
Yeah.
the final product's great, but it was like all the footage they would have of like how they came. I think I watched one was with you too, and how they came up with the song "How the Streets Have No," where the streets have no name, and they were messing around how that iconic beginning to that song where it slowly comes on.
Yeah.
I just thought that was amazing,
Yeah.
and just how they came up with that. A lot of riffing, just sessions, and again, I think the lack of distraction creates a lot of great art. Just getting into the zone. There's lots of examples of like Italian artists back in the day who just like would just paint all day and they get into the zone. You don't go to
Yeah.
the bathroom, you don't eat. These are not good things. But my daughter does this. She'll paint like 14 hours straight. She'll just be in there,
Wow.
get in the zone and just all day. We have to like, you need to eat. Like it's almost an obsession. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think that's awesome. Reminds me of the movie Soul. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Where I forget what his name is, John or Joe. Maybe it's Joe, and he's playing the piano and he's in the zone and you see him lift up out of his body and he's just up in the ether, like he's really in the zone then. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. That's so true.
Do you ever feel that for yourself when you're painting and doing things?
I do. And it's the same thing. I forget to drink water, forget to go to the bathroom, forget to eat. And I end up walking out of the studio with paint on my face. And
Yeah.
that's when I look in the mirror and I'm like, hey, that was a good day. That was a good session. Yeah.
I think a lot of artists are always trying to, whatever it is, whether it's sports has a lot of artistic aspect to it. And it's like, how do we get there? How do we keep getting? I even look with my own work whenever I step in, I'm working with people. How do I get to where it feels that time exists differently for me? And I'm painting a picture when working with the canvas of people's bodies, you know?
Wow. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you feel that same way too? Where you're like getting in the zone and you're like forgetting to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I was a collegiate athlete, so I have it from that point of view, but just like from work, but I always see physical activity as like in more of an idealism, I see the beauty and physical activity and exercise, moving our bodies, the whole thing. So I see it in that way. And I feel like this synergy with my mind and my body coming together and the communication that we start having with each other, this elevated communication we start having with each other, I guess you could say art can, like the act of creating is almost anything because I'm creating a relationship with other people and helping them create a better relationship with their body, their mind. And so that's why I said, what is an artist? I think perpetually it's always been an artist. We get this picture of an artist. This is a person who's painting something. Maybe they're a musician, and we just put that in a box, very small box. But if you really think about it, so much of what we do is art and life.
Yeah. I think that's so true, right? The homes that we live in were created by an architect or somebody who created that design. The food that we eat is artistically put together to make these delicious meals. I think there are everywhere,
Right.
everywhere.
Chefs, right? I think it was a massive artistic endeavor. Putting the right flavors together, the colors you put out there. I think a lot of life is art. We just have not allowed people to see themselves as artists.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is so true. There's so much art everywhere in everything. And we just forget that somebody somewhere created the thing that we're doing, the chair you're sitting on, or
Exactly.
art in the Zoom, right?
That's true. Somebody created Zoom, created the chair, created the table. If you think about creation is all around us.
Yeah.
The act of making is almost 100% part of your life on a regular basis.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
I
It's
never
so
thought about it that way. Yeah, somebody made the sidewalk, made the road, whatever it
magic.
is. It's literally, we need to flip this paradigm. Like all things are art, actually, really. You think about it.
It
Yeah.
really is. It really is. It's so much. And then we, like you said, we put it on a pedestal of, oh, you only certain people can make it
Yeah.
here, but because we're all artists in some way,
Yeah,
for
most
everything.
definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your amazing artistic gifts with me and audience and just your energy. You have a great energy. I don't have the same gift as you, but I feel energy with people. And it's funny, like one of my really good friends, we met on a podcast. I've never met him in person, ever.
Oh,
We've known each other for many years now. He's one of my best friends in life. And I remember the first time we got on the podcast, it was like an explosion. I just felt it. And it's hard to explain,
yeah.
but I know it the minute I meet somebody. I know whether like it's going to be great or it's going to be good or
You
it's
just know.
ethereal almost. Like,
Yeah.
how do I know this?
Yeah. I think it's because light attracts light. Like
Yeah.
engage with people that elevate you and make you feel better and lift up your spirits. And I love that. I'm always attracted to people who are like, they're just a light. They have this optimism about them. They're just
Yeah.
here to do good things and they want to help people. And
Yeah.
that's the best. I love
It
it.
is the best. Let's shine your light. Let people know they can experience your art, you, and everything. How can people learn more about you, Heather?
People can connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Heatherack Artist. And I've got some great freebies on my website for folks to learn more about color and all things at heatherack.com/thank you.
Wonderful. Heather, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.